you can follow those. You can follow this video again if you get confused. So what I recommend is every single time you take a photograph of one of these like scenes of your alter ego, you take a photograph of one landscape and one portrait, just so that when it actually comes down to you creating your comic strip, you can arrange it. You have options to actually arrange if you want to have one section portrait or one section landscape. But I've simply just on my desktop here got 6 different images which I've already kind of organized in my head. So the first thing I'm going to do is open up Adobe Photoshop, File, New, A4. Make sure that it's the orientation is portrait. Sorry, background needs to be white. Create, and then you can just drag these images into Photoshop. So I'm actually just gonna. So make sure they're all in the same document. And now in our layers panel, you can see that we have 1 to 6 photographs. And by the way, if there's any questions, just like ask me. If you get confused about something, I can go a bit slower if you want. So in your layers panel over here, you can see 1 to 6 photographs which I have. The first thing I'm going to want to do is I'm going to need to rasterize these just so that I can actually edit them. So I select all of the layers by holding down Shift and coming on my layers panel, and then Control, left click, and then come down to rasterize layers. And then what I've actually got in the brief, in the document which I'm gonna upload shortly after this, I will have some layouts ready for you, so you know exactly how you want to lay it out. The minimum you have to do is only 1 comic strip. So but if you really want to, if your alter ego has this like crazy period in the daytime where they do loads and loads of things, you can do more than 1 of these. It's perfectly fine. So I'm gonna just toggle my visibility on all of these. I don't need them right now, other than the first one. And highlight. I'm gonna lock them as well. So sorry, that took way longer than it needed to. So the first thing I done this morning was I actually have to get the train. Hope you don't follow these photographs and try and find out where I live. But this is just the first me going into the train station. What I thought might be quite nice is you having an image of yourself, maybe for the first photograph, just so we can actually see your alter ego. It'd be quite interesting. So I'm just gonna hold Shift and rescale this image so it's smaller. And my first image is just gonna go there. So that's me just going into the station. And the second one I've got is me getting on the train. Hold Shift. So what's going to happen is you should never take your finger off Shift when you rescale these images, because it ends up distorting the image. But because these images are not going to align with each other very well, you're going to just have to stretch it. So if you just take your finger off Shift and just come to this little arrow and move it across, it will stretch the image. But it's fine, because we're going to edit these images. You're not going to tell that it's been distorted. So me walking downstairs into the train station, me about to get on the train, me on the train. This is quite awkward, taking these photographs in the morning. People were looking at me like, what on earth are you doing? A good way of trying to get your images all the same size, what I tend to do is go over to the image I've just made and then just align it up like that, just so that they're perfectly the same size. That's going to go there. Two more. As you can see, it's a lovely sunny day in East London, as always. And of course, these like sequences kind of need to make sense. Because I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to add some text to these as well, so you can explain, what's actually happening in these images, like what your alter ego is doing. My boring alter ego is just going into college. And there we are, Leighton Midland Road. Right, so I have all my images on this page. I'm just going to highlight all of these and just drag it into the middle of the page like that. That's perfect. It's nice and snug. So come back to my layers panel, and I'm going to select all of these layers by doing the same thing by holding shift, and I'm going to click control, and I'm going to merge all of these layers so that it's all one document like that. And next, what do I want to do next? I'm going to copy and paste this layer that we've just made. So Command C, Command V to copy and paste. And I'm going to toggle the visibility on the first layer. So I'm just on this layer now. And we're going to add a filter. And the filter we're going to be using is, come to filter gallery just so you can see everything. I've already got it selected. Is posterize. You can probably tell just by the word. Well, it's poster edges. Sorry. So you can tell by the word poster edges that it's kind of it's using fewer tones really than what the original photograph actually had. So it's a technique which kind of used to be used to create posters really. So you don't want to make, so if you come up to these sliders over here where it says edge thickness and edge intensity and posterization, you want to make sure that the edge intensity is turned up. Now these are going to be different for every single person, but you want to adjust it just so that the image, because if I bring up this edge thickness and this edge intensity, it's not going to look right. If you can see some of the lines which are showing, some of these it just doesn't look right. So I wouldn't recommend having the edge thickness and edge intensity up to the maximum. I recommend maybe about no more than maybe 3 or 5. And your posterization should be around, say around 2. Yeah, I think that's fine. And then next, what we're going to do is we're going to come over to image, adjustments, and threshold. And what this does is it changes the image to just black and white, and it converts the lights and the shadows just into black and white. So it's almost kind of like a pen drawing. And this is definitely going to be very different for every single person. So you're going to want to toggle this threshold so you can actually, I want there to be less whites in this image. So you don't want it to be too white or too black. You kind of want it to kind of look like a drawing, I would say. Yeah, that's okay. I'm happy with that. doesn't have to be 100% perfect. Photoshop is never really 100% perfect. So you're using this method. You're always going to see these little grainy dots. To touch them up is quite a long, complicated process. But once we finish editing everything, you're not really going to notice them, I don't think. So it's fine. So I'm okay with that. And think I'm going to add another filter. But this time I'm going to stylize. I'm going to come over to stylize. I'm going to change it so that these lines aren't just as rugged and thick. So they're a little bit more, just so they're a little bit more smoother. So if I come to stylize, you can go to oil paint, and that's going to convert these lines to more kind of like an oil painting. And what you can do is you can toggle preview, so you can see the difference. Now, I've not even edited anything on here yet, but I can tell with preview on that just looks better. It's more in detail, and it kind of gets rid of some of these dots. It kind of, I think it looks better. So play around with your stylization and your cleanliness. Sorry. Your cleanliness obviously just makes you can see what it's doing in this little image here. So that's just some bricks. And if I toggle the cleanliness, you should be able to see it come through a little bit clearer. Yeah, so the lines are more like an oil painting the more you play around with that. Play around with stylization. Don't spend too long on this. So you don't want it, because I can see on this train now it's not really looking quite right. It's kind of just looking too much like an oil painting. So I'm going to bring the stylization down, really. And I'm happy with that, so I'm just going to click OK. And get rid of this reminder, dismiss all. And then toggle the visibility on your other layer. I'm going to bring this up. And just going to do the exact same thing, except I'm going to come over to my filter gallery and come to poster edges again. But I'm going to bring the thickness and the intensity of those edges down, because what we're trying to do is we're trying to get the colors to show through, and this image is gonna mask over the other image, so it's just the colors coming through because we kind of have the lines already. This is going to just add more color, so make sure that the thickness and the intensity of the edges are turned all the way down. And I think I'm going to bring the posterization down to 1. No, I'm going to leave it at 2 actually. Just click OK. And I'm going to add some. I'm going to add the oil paint effect again. And I'm just going to leave the exact same settings for that. Okay. So now you should have your 2 images like this. Okay, so you have your lines, and then you have your color. So how to get these 2 images to work with each other is you're going to need to get them to blend. So where it says normal over here, if you click on that and you select multiply, if you toggle the invisibility, you can see the difference. You can see the difference. So the lines are being added with the layer below, and then the top layer is adding some color. So that looks like more like a comic strip, and that's it, just for adding some images. But what you're going to really want to do is add some text as well, and add some borders to some of these, to all of these. Sorry, all of these images. So to do that, first of all, I'm going to merge both of these again, just so that it's in the same layer. And I'm going to come over to my rectangle tool. I'm going to, you don't want to fill, so, and you want the stroke to be black, and just draw a rectangle. Now the rectangle is really thin, so if you come over here and you can change the thickness of that. Hello, I can hear someone's mic. No one's asking any questions. Is this making sense to people? One person can say yes. Are you even still there?
Yes.
Because I can't tell. Okay. So, just start drawing some rectangles. I think maybe, so I'm going to hit Command Z, and I want these to be a little bit thicker actually. Yeah, that's fine. And another one there. Yeah, this journey was very boring. I'm sorry it's not as exciting as I'm sure that your alter egos are going to be. But this is my life. And that's it. So like I said, these can be as long. You can do more than one of these if your alter ego has this like madness which goes on in the day. I'm sure that some of them do. Just so that all these rectangles are in the same layer, I'm just going to merge them all as well. So merge shapes. And so yeah, text. You should be adding text to these really. This could be maybe the thought process, what your alter ego is thinking whilst they're doing this like mad thing, or maybe it can be in third person. So maybe it could be, you could name your alter ego in the third person and kind of like commentate, kind of like a Louis Theroux about what it is that your alter ego is doing. So to add some text, I'm just going to add some text just to this rectangle here. I'm not going to do every single one because that's going to take too long. It's the exact same process. So I'm going to add a fill to this so that it's white to my rectangle. And I'm just going to draw. Actually, you know what? I'm not going to do a rectangle. I think in comic books, they sometimes tend to be like rounded rectangles. So I'm going to use a rounded my rounded rectangle tool. That's a tongue twister. And just going to draw a rectangle like that. I think add a small black stroke to that, maybe a little bit bigger. And then this is the only time I would recommend using Comic Sans. Please never ever ever use Comic Sans just when you're doing a comic strip. I don't actually think comic strips even use Comic Sans, but it's here. So if you come to where this massive T is, and then come back up to where it says, I don't know what it's going to say. It might say Apple Color, but I don't think it will. And just type Comic Sans, and you want regular, really. And you can just, that's huge. So you can change the size of your text by kind of like how you have it on Word. So where there's this miniature T and then this larger T, if you just come to there and change it to, see what, is that small? That's too small. 14. So I'm just going to have it at 10. And I'm just going to type I still think it's too small. Something like this train was Sorry, I'm really fidgety with this. I can't tell what's a good size. That's okay. So this train was really smelly. Now, obviously, you don't want to have a massive like blank rectangle like this. You want to fill the entire rectangle. I'm just going to make it smaller, so it's like that, and bring that in there. Oh no, I don't want to do that. This can be quite fidgety sometimes, but there we go. So this train was really smelly. It wasn't actually smelly, but sometimes that happens on public transport. And that's it. So I'm setting this now. I think, how long will it take you to do this? It's Wednesday today. I'm going to say Friday afternoon, actually. Actually, no, not even Friday afternoon. I think any time on Friday. So I'm setting it now. And if you can take these photographs and then follow these steps on Adobe on this video, which I'm actually recording, and you can just hand it in on Friday. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so I'm going to stop. Oh yeah, also, never forget, save this. Save it as a JPEG. Doesn't matter too much, but save it as a JPEG. I'm just going to save it to my desktop as comic strip 1. Make sure the quality is on all the way up to maximum, which is 12. Okay. And then I'm going to add a link to Google Classrooms where you guys can actually submit this work.